of green eyes.
I believe it. I mean, I won't drive through the battlefield at night either. It's kind of it's scary down there.
Oh man.
Mostly because so it's the battlefield. It's a military park. There's no street lights down the road, so it's completely fully dark. It's just scary.
Okay, scared of the dark.
Guilty.
See, I never see any ghosts or anything like that because they're scared of me.
I mean, I'd be scared of you too if you.
But hey, happy birthday to Tony Mulvey.
Right.
Speaking of old green eyes.
Another year closer to 30, Tony. All right, thanks for that, Christian. We'll talk to you a little bit later.
Thanks, Christian.
Right now, we're going to welcome Mary O'Connell back to the show, talking still about some scary stuff going on, but this time 3PL volumes falling, Mary. Not actual, ghost tales. This is still scary for the industry, though. Let's talk about it.
Mary is not scared of green eyes. She has got no phobias about green eyes.
I don't have phobias. I have green eyes, so that would be really awkward if I was scared of green eyes. I'd be scared of myself.
So do I. I'm offended. I'm offended by that story. I have green eyes myself.
But yeah, I would say that this time when we're talking, much less terrifying actual ghost stories and more terrifying for, your budget, your bottom line, et cetera, et cetera. Armstrong and Associates, they released a study that found that they are expecting 3PL volumes to drop next or by double digits, which I mean, that kind of makes sense if you look at how quickly those volumes rose and those revenue numbers and those margins grew. I mean, they seemingly grew overnight when the pandemic started. So kind of like all good things, what goes up must come down. So it's only a matter of time that this was bound to happen. Now it just kind of becomes, how resilient are you to these decreases and how much value add can you provide your customers?
Yeah, it's really an indication of how deep the freight recession can go. As JP was talking, people don't understand how ferocious this could be. And this is an indicator that it is going to get pretty bad when they start seeing the volumes drop after the truckloads drop, right? Truckloads increase. Slightly after that, LTL usually starts to increase a second time because you have the spillover and then you have the cost where they'll start breaking up the truckloads, right, and moving spot volume market contracts and so on. And then the reverse happens. Once truck starts going down, shipments get smaller, LTL gets a boost. Then when that falls down, you really know things are getting bad. What are we looking at? Was this a surprise to you? And what are you looking at as far as going into the fourth quarter? Will there be any peak in LTL? Will that help it out, or is that just going to hit some parcel a little bit?
I think that, I don't know. So the thing is, this holiday season is going to be so atypical from what we've seen in the past, not even even excluding the last 2 years, which were just insane. But even 2018, 2019, we saw those big bumps for retail peak season. And this year, I don't think that we're going to see that. So I think there might be some elevated LTL levels, but not nearly what we've seen over the past few years, because LTL levels were elevated and capacity was already tight on LTL before we even hit the COVID boom. So now that everything has kind of calmed down and course corrected itself, I think that we'll still see the volume for e-commerce, for parcel, and maybe some LTL, but not nearly what we would have seen in any other typical year. And I mean, I'm not overly surprised this happened because, again, you can only fly so close to the sun, but I think that we've seen it kind of in earnings reports as they've been coming out, like when the carriers start to report less than record year or record quarters, then it's only a couple of months before the 3PLs follow behind because everything's very cyclical. So it's just a matter kind of when one goes down, the others go down. So it's not really that much of a surprise, but I think the thing that will be a surprise is all of these brokerages that started over the last year and a half to 2 years that grew exponentially, that had all this business, had all this volume. I think it's really going to be interesting to see if they can maintain that and maintain that competitive advantage over some of their other carriers and kind of it's not just about, oh yeah, I can make sure that that picks up now, or I can get you the best price. It's now back to what's your service going to be to keep a customer. So I think that we'll see a lot more effort put forth to customer retention to try to not, lose anything else, because we don't have a healthy spot market that if I lose customer, well, I can just make up some of it on the spot market. We don't have that right now. So I think paying very close attention to the earnings calls in Q3 and going through those questions that the analysts ask at the end for kind of outlook and everything like that. I think that's really going to be the key moving forward to kind of figure out where everybody is positioning themselves.
So, Mary, I asked JP about companies insulating themselves during a recessionary time, but now I want to frame that question to you, same, but as an individual standpoint, right? For a lot of folks, transportation was a really attractive area for the last 2 years. Make some good money in it. Your job opportunities were everywhere. So you might have maybe hopped into a newer brokerage that was growing and said, you know what, okay, I'm going to get my feet under me. Maybe you've done really well. Maybe you've learned some lessons and you're a great broker now, right? Is now the time to try and start maybe finding your way into an established brokerage in a stable place that has that insulation? Or are you, as a broker, just trying to make yourself unfireable, make yourself an asset that can't be cut when your brokerage eventually has to make those cuts?
Well, I mean, if someone is choosing the latter and make themselves unfireable, the number one thing that you need to remember is everyone can be replaced at any time for any reason. So I do not think that that's a great strategy. I certainly think that, creating more value add that you can provide to the company will help you not be fireable, but at the same time, not at the expense of, not getting fairly paid. So if you're taking on extra responsibility, but you haven't, seen any bump in salary or any rise in commission or any additional benefits that you may have that could offset the new workload that you have, that's just letting a company take advantage of you, which is great for a paycheck, but not when you're being unfairly paid. But I think that, from an individual standpoint, if things are going, just read the room. When you start hearing those buzzwords of, we're just going to reorganize some things, we're going to tighten the belt. When you hear those buzzwords go on in those town halls, that, you're like, wait a second, this is completely different from what we've been talking about for the last few years. You can see the writing on the wall for the most part. So when you start hearing some of those words being tossed around, I would maybe start looking at some of the other brokerages, but a lot of it will also come down to your non-competes that you will have, because I know that if you are at a brokerage and they have a non-compete, you can't necessarily just hop to another brokerage. So definitely double check any kind of contractual obligations that you've signed, because maybe your best option is just to stay where you are, and then let them fire you so you can go work somewhere else, and that invalidates that non-compete depending on what depending on what's in there. But I would definitely say just, pay attention, instead of skipping the town hall meetings or your all company meetings, maybe go or listen or, get the notes from someone, because this is the time to just kind of, pay attention. And it goes back to not burning any bridges, because if you were at, say, a big stable brokerage, and you left to go be on a new one that's a little bit more independent, keeping those positive relationships. So that way, if something doesn't work out here, you can still likely go back to where you were before. And it's not a huge ordeal. You didn't, leave a trail of fire behind you.
That's a good policy always. Don't burn bridges unnecessarily, obviously. A difficult thing to cash in on it when everything is crashed, right? Because those established are also tightening their belts as well. And that's why you see the new guys and the small guys go away first, right? And then the establishment starts to feel it. And once the establishment starts to feel it, it's already way too late, because they don't feel it for 6 months after everybody else has realized that things are getting bad, right? Now we're starting to see the legacy carriers and 3PL start talk about it. That means the little guys are already in the unemployment line. It's too late. It's 6 months later. Are 3PLs that have a wider array of services more insulated from being fired or from feeling the effects of this because they more market or more verticals, or are they just losing in more places?
Probably a little bit of both. So like if you
Yeah.
know that you do if you know that you handle warehousing very well and you've just started adding like more of a truck brokerage or more of a managed transportation service and like lane planning, then maybe cut back on some of those things that you haven't seen those profits from. Like if you're waiting for your managed transport division to be a little bit more profitable, either take steps to beef that up now or maybe cut back and not really look to add in like a whole lot more customers in that realm, and maybe just stick to what you know you're good at and where you know that you can kind of mitigate some of those unforeseen costs. Because I mean, there's always costs that come with onboarding a new customer, starting new work for them. Just kind of stay in what you know, but also at the same time, like just talk to your customers. Nobody wants to ask their customers how they're doing. Make a point to talk to your customers, check in on them, make sure that they are happy, that they're satisfied. Don't wait for your like quarterly business review to do that. Just have an account manager just check in and say, hey, how was last month? Was it good? What can we do better? Do you have any complaints in service? Like, just do the baseline level of just like, hey, how's it going? Checking in. Because then if there are issues, they aren't going to wait for once a quarter to bring them up, or as they're walking out the door, they're not going to say, well, oh, you haven't done this over the last year. Excuse me. Really just check in on them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be a good
advice.
human and check in. All right, Mary, thank you for joining us this morning. Great to have you as always. We'll see you next week. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with more FreightWaves Now in just a few minutes.